Now I'd also like to add a particle effect so that when we hit the spider we get some green goo splatting out. So I'll go to Game Object, Create Other, and then Particle System. I'll rename this to Blood. And I'll drag this onto the spider. And then reset its position. So now let's edit the particle settings. So I'll go over to Open Editor. And I'll show you the settings I used. So to begin with, I added a second particle system. So I hit this plus sign over here. And it actually created a secondary game object right over here. And let's start with the settings for the first particle system, Blood. First I set the color to a dark green. I then set the duration to 1. And I played with the lifetime, so it's around 0.7475, something like that. And I'll just round these off, so start speed around 2, and I'll fix this to 0.75. The size I set to 0.07, so the initial blood particle effect is very tiny. They look like drops. And then I set a gravity multiplier to 1, so that way they'll fall towards the ground. I took looping off from both particle systems. And I set the simulation space to world so that when the blood droplets fall to the ground, they don't follow the spider as he's walking. They just stay on the ground. And in emission, I set the rate to 30. And in shape, I changed it from cone to sphere. Now just a quick note about the shape. It's not the shape of the particle, but the shape of the object which emits the particles. And then I matched the radius so that it kind of fits the spider's body at a 0.5 size. And then I selected emit from shell so that it doesn't pick a random point within the sphere, but it picks a point from the surface of the sphere. And I replicated the settings for our second particle system in shape as well. Now I added a new setting inside our second particle system, and that's color over lifetime. What I did was I wanted the blood dust effect to, or mist effect to fade out over time. So I selected the same color for both begin and end, but then in the alpha, I made it so that it becomes fully transparent with an alpha of 0 by the time the particle reaches its lifetime. So now in the emissions of the second particle system, I set the rate to 10, so there aren't that many spawned. And I use very similar settings as I did in the blood, except the size is a lot bigger. And you can see the differences here as well. So now that we have this particle effect, let's go ahead and use it in our game. I'm sure as you guessed, I've created another implementation of Hittable called HitParticle. Inside HitParticle, I set a reference to the particle system which I just created. That way I can drag it into the inspector. And then simply inside hit, I just call particle.play. I added the component and I dragged in the blood object into the particle system reference. So now let's give it a try. That looks pretty good.